What if I told you that the most powerful country in the world isn't actually getting richer anymore? Not in the way it used to, not in the way your parents experienced, and definitely not in the way the American dream promised. Your paycheck arrives, and somehow it disappears faster every month. Groceries feel heavier, rent feels suffocating, owning a home feels like a fantasy. And yet, the headlines tell us the economy is strong. The stock market keeps breaking records. GDP keeps going up. So here's the uncomfortable question no one wants to ask. How can the richest nations in human history feel poorer year after year without collapsing? Tonight, we're going to uncover a truth that most politicians, economists, and media outlets avoid. A story about slow decline, invisible force, and a system that didn't break loudly, it broke quietly. For most of history, poverty was obvious. You saw it in empty shelves, closed factories, collapsed governments, worthless money. But what's happening now is different. The United States isn't collapsing. Europe isn't collapsing. Japan isn't collapsing. They're eroding. On paper, everything looks fine. GDP growth, low unemployment, record high asset prices. But in real life, people feel trapped. Young Americans are delaying marriage, delaying children, delaying home ownership. Middle-aged families feel one medical bill away from disaster. Retirees fear inflation more than death. So how is this possible? The answer begins with a dangerous illusion. A country can look rich, while its people are quietly getting poorer. And to understand why, we need to go back to a moment most people don't even remember. In 1971, something historic happened. President Richard Nixon went on television and made an announcement that changed the global economy forever. The U.S. dollar would no longer be backed by gold. At the time, it sounded technical, temporary, harmless, but this single decision unlocked something powerful. For the first time in modern history, money was no longer limited by physical reality. Governments could print, borrow, expand. At first, this felt like freedom. Economic growth accelerated. Crises were delayed instead of endured. Pain could be postponed. And for decades, it worked, until it didn't. Fast forward to 2008. The global financial system was collapsing. Banks were failing. Markets were crashing. The world stood on the edge. So governments did what they now knew how to do best. They printed money, a lot of it. Trillions of dollars flooded the system. Then came 2020, a global pandemic, lockdowns, economic paralysis. Once again, governments responded the same way, but on a scale never seen before. More trillions, more stimulus, more debt. And at first, it felt painless. No breadlines, no riots, no hyperinflation. But here's the trick about inflation. It doesn't always scream. Sometimes, it whispers. Inflation doesn't feel like robbery. It feels like confusion. Why does my paycheck feel smaller? Why does everything cost more? Why am I working harder just to stay in place? Your salary goes up 3%. Your rent goes up 10%. Your savings earn almost nothing. Your grocery bill quietly explodes. And here's the part few people understand. The money didn't disappear. It just moved. When governments printed money, it didn't spread evenly. It flowed first into stocks, real estate, financial assets. If you owned assets, you became richer fast. If you relied on wages, you fell behind. This wasn't an accident. It was a design flaw baked into the system. And over time, it created the greatest wealth divide in modern history. In today's economy, making money no longer comes from making things. It comes from owning things, owning land, owning stocks, owning intellectual property. The system rewards capital, not labor. That's why a billionaire can gain more wealth in a day than a teacher earns in a lifetime. And when an economy is built this way, something dangerous happens. It stops serving the majority. Growth continues, but only for those already ahead. The country stays rich. The people do not. Now let's talk about something even bigger. Production. For decades, rich countries believed they had cracked the ultimate formula. We don't need to make things anymore. Manufacturing was dirty. Labor was expensive. Regulations were annoying. So factories were shipped overseas. China, Vietnam, Mexico, Bangladesh. At first, it looked brilliant. Cheap goods, high profits, happy consumers. But here's what was quietly lost. Control. When you stop producing, you stop commanding. COVID exposed this brutally. No chips, no medicine, no masks. The richest countries on Earth couldn't supply themselves, and rebuilding production isn't like flipping a switch. Factories take years. Skills take generations. Supply chains take decades. Once production leaves, power follows. Another uncomfortable truth. Many rich countries aren't wealthy. They're leveraged. The United States now carries over $34 trillion in debt. Japan's debt exceeds 260% of GDP. Europe quietly marches down the same path. Debt itself isn't evil, but debt becomes fatal when it replaces real growth. Instead of increasing productivity, governments borrowed to maintain living standards, avoid hard political decisions, delay, reform. Debt became anesthesia. No pain now, much more pain later. And now, interest rates are rising. Suddenly, the bill is due. Here's something no stimulus check can fix. Demographics. Rich countries are getting old. Fewer workers. More retirees. That means fewer taxpayers were. Higher healthcare costs. More pensions. Slower growth. Japan already lives in this future. Europe is next. The U.S. is only slightly delayed. An aging society doesn't collapse dramatically. It slows, then stagnates, then declines. And when growth disappears, everything becomes a fight. Here's where things turn dangerous. People don't revolt because they're poor. They revolt because they feel cheated. When people believe, hard work no longer pays. The system favors insiders. The future is closed. Trust dies. Institutions weaken. Politics polarize. Societies fracture. A nation can survive poverty. It cannot survive the belief that the game is rigged. For decades, the global system revolved around the West. Trade rules, finance, technology. That era is ending. The world is fragmenting. Supply chains are regional. Trade is weaponized. Sanctions are routine. Countries once dependent on Western systems are building alternatives. And dominance, once lost, is rarely regained. So here it is. The truth beneath the charts, the headlines, the talking points. Rich countries are not collapsing. They are becoming less exceptional, less dominant, less productive, less secure. The wealth still exists, but it's thinner, more fragile, and concentrated in fewer hands. History shows us something unsettling. When nations stop producing, borrow endlessly, age rapidly, concentrate wealth, they don't fall loudly. They fade, slowly, quietly, one paycheck at a time. And most people only realize what happened when it's already too late. When people imagine decline, they picture chaos, riots, empty shelves, burning cities. But real decline doesn't look like a movie. It looks like normal life. The lights stay on. Netflix still works. Amazon still delivers. The illusion holds. That's what makes it dangerous. Because by the time decline becomes visible, it's already irreversible. History doesn't announce collapse. It whispers it. And if you listen closely, rich countries are already whispering. Every real economy runs on one thing: productivity. How much value you create per hour of work. For most of the 20th century, productivity in rich countries exploded. Factories, machines, electricity, automation. Each generation produced more than the last. That's what paid for higher wages, social security, healthcare, public infrastructure rise. But something strange happened around the late 1990 seconds. Productivity growth slowed, not collapsed, not stopped, just slowed. And here's the uncomfortable part. Most modern growth since then didn't come from producing more. It came from cheaper credit, asset inflation, financial engineering. In other words, we didn't create more value. We just repriced what already existed. That's not growth. That's rearrangement. This is where the story turns darker. Over time, rich economies stopped rewarding builders. They started rewarding traders. Finance grew faster than manufacturing. Speculation grew faster than innovation. Money began making money without touching the real world. And once an economy becomes financialized, it changes its values. Risk becomes abstract. Failure becomes socialized. Success becomes privatized. If a factory fails, workers lose jobs. If a bank fails, governments intervene. The message becomes clear. Capital is protected. Labor is expendable. That realization slowly breaks the social contract. Here's where things get truly dangerous. Because once a country reaches this stage, politics becomes trapped. Raising taxes risks backlash. Cutting spending risks revolt. Reforming systems risks elections. So governments choose the only remaining option: delay, borrow more, print more, promise more, kick the can forward. Every election cycle becomes about avoiding pain today, even if it guarantees pain tomorrow. This isn't corruption, it's survival politics, and it pushes rich countries deeper into the same hole. The middle class isn't just an income group, it's a stabilizer. When the middle class is strong, society is calm, democracy functions. Extremes stay small, but when the middle class erodes, everything radicalizes. And the middle class erodes when three things break. 1. Housing becomes unaffordable. 2. Education stops guaranteeing mobility. San. Wages decouple from productivity. All three are happening right now. Housing isn't shelter anymore. It's an asset class. Education isn't opportunity. It's debt. Work isn't advancement. It's survival. That's not an accident. It's a system that optimized for returns, not people. Here's something rarely discussed. Poor countries know they're poor. Rich countries in decline don't. That creates a unique kind of anxiety. People feel guilty for struggling men, ashamed for falling behind, confused by the disconnect beyond. If the economy is strong, why am I not? So they blame themselves, until they stop blaming themselves and start blaming each other. That's when societies fracture. Now zoom out, because this isn't just about America, it's about the global balance of power. For decades, rich countries set the rules. Trade, finance, institutions. But power follows production, and production followed labor, and labor moved east. Asia didn't just manufacture goods, it absorbed skills, built infrastructure, created ecosystems. Meanwhile, the West consumed. And consumption without production is not power, it's dependency. For years, rich countries weaponized finance, sanctions, trade restrictions, access control. It worked at first, but every weapon teaches your opponent how to defend. Now, trade is diversifying, payments are fragmenting, supply chains are duplicating spirit. The global system is becoming less centralized, less efficient, and far less forgiving. The era of easy dominance is ending. Here's the question hanging in the air. Is this inevitable? History says, not exactly. Decline is not destiny, but reversal is brutal. Every successful recovery required short-term pain, political courage, cultural discipline, and that's where rich countries struggle most, because comfort weakens urgency, and urgency is what reform requires. From here, there are only three paths. Path 1. Managed decline. Living standards slowly fall. Inequality remains. Stability is preserved barely. This is the most likely path. Quiet, controlled, unheroic. Path 2. Crisis and reset. Debt breaks. Currencies shock. Systems are forced to change. Painful, chaotic, but transformative. This is how history usually resets. Path 3. Reinvention. Reindustrialization. Productivity investment, real reform. This is the hardest path, and the rarest. At this point, you might be wondering, okay, but what does this mean for me? It means the rules you were promised no longer apply. Hard work alone is not enough. Degrees are not guarantees. Stability is no longer default. This isn't fear-mongering, it's awareness, because in every transition, some people lose, and some adapt. History shows us something uncomfortable. When systems strain, the adaptable survive. Those who understand incentivics, control scarce skills and avoid excessive debt, think long-term time. They don't escape decline, they navigate it. Meanwhile, those who trust the old promises get crushed by the new reality. At its heart, this isn't an economic story. It's a human one. It's about expectations colliding with reality. A generation raised to believe life would improve. Discovering it might not. That realization hurts more than poverty because it breaks identity. So let's say this clearly. Rich countries are not poor. They are misaligned. Their systems reward the past, punish the future, and protect the powerful. And systems like that always decay. Not suddenly, but steadily. One day, years from now, historians will look back at this era. They won't call it a collapse, they'll call it a transition. The moment when rich countries stopped being engines of growth and became managers of decline. And the people who suffered most won't be those who lost everything overnight. It will be those who trusted the system just a little too long. So the question isn't, will rich countries fail? The real question is, who will still be standing when the illusion finally fades? Because decline doesn't announce itself. It doesn't ask permission. It doesn't wait for consensus. It simply keeps going until people stop pretending nothing is wrong. If this video made you uncomfortable, that's the point, because comfort is what allowed this to happen in the first place.